Hello and welcome to a DFS preview and DFS strategy video for the 2022 Charles Schwab Challenge. Now the reason I'm combining these videos is because unfortunately I had to spend the weekend in the hospital and part of Monday because I had a partial obstruction in my small intestine. And no, it was not because someone dared me to swallow a Matchbox car. That would be a funnier story to tell, but the reason is unknown. So ran a ton of tests trying to figure everything out. I had intense pain Saturday and it required me to go to urgent care. And from there, they're like, I think you should probably go to the ER. So that is what I did. And unfortunately, I couldn't watch most of the PGA Championship. I got to see some of it when I was in the staging room. They had CBS, but in my hospital room, they did not. So I didn't get to see any of the PGA Championship Sunday. And I was trying to follow along with my phone, but there was, oh my God, guys, like they didn't have a charger for my phone, like one that actually charged it, you know, I didn't have a strong enough charge. So like I'd give it to them for 2 hours and only charge like 10%. So it's like, I was sleeping a lot. I was so bored, guys. It was terrible. And of course I live in a city where none of my family are, and all of my friends were actually out of town. So I couldn't get anyone to go to my apartment or anything like that to bring me stuff. Now I know, sob story, yada, yada, yada. I'm not looking for sympathy, by the way. I'm just telling you the reason this is coming out late is because it was a weekend. It was a weekend that I wish never happened, but here we are. So I'm combining the preview and strategy video. We'll also recap the PGA Championship just based off the sweet spot process, what we covered in the strategy video, that kind of stuff, like we do all the time, because the whole goal is to hit the optimal lineup. And obviously I like to look at historical stats, apply them to this week's field, try to determine, you know, which golfers in this current field are primed to be in the optimal lineup. That's the whole purpose of these videos. Now, before we get into any of that, I'm doing things a little different in this one. Now, I had told you that every single week we don't hit the goal. I'm going to, and by the way, we're talking about the subscriber giveaway here. If we don't hit the goal of getting to 400 subscribers, I'm going to shave off $5 until we get down to $10. Well, this week is the last week until we would go to $10, because this would be originally worth $15. I'm going to double that to $30. To try to get more of an incentive to get this channel to 400 subscribers. It's not trying to get 400 new subscribers. It's just trying to get this channel to 400 subscribers. Next week, I'm actually not doing a video because I will be moving. And everything is like all within Monday, Tuesday. So there's just no way that I can put out a video. So I'm going to run this giveaway. I'm going to give you guys 2 weeks to get this channel up to 400 subscribers. So if you want in on this $30 giveaway, be subscribed, comment down below, give me your 2 favorite golfers that you're going to build your lineups around this week, and you will be into the giveaway. And by the way, any video that I put out during the week, if you comment on it, you get 1 free entry. And we do this week in, week out until we run the giveaway. That way you can build up more and more and more giveaways the more you participate with this channel. It's my way to reward you guys out there. So yeah, if we can get to 400 subscribers, we just need to get, what, 34 new ones? And when I look at, you know, all the analytics of my videos, half of the people who watch are not subscribed. So there is definitely room where we can get this up to 400 subscribers. So you guys can do your part. I will reward you. We'll run a $30 giveaway. If we don't reach this in 2 weeks, then I will give away $10 to all those that have participated in this week, last week, and the 2 weeks prior to that. So just throwing that out there, $30 can be yours. We can get this channel up to 400 subscribers. Second giveaway, Prize Picks. If you're not yet signed up on Prize Picks, I'm going to give you the opportunity to win $20 just by signing up and using the promo code SweetSpot. Then you have to put an initial deposit of at least $20 in. That way we can make it free. So if you do that, you put that initial deposit of $20 in, I'm going to give you $20 back. Boom, it's free for you. Plus, Prize Picks is going to match your deposit up to $100. So your 20 turns into 40, and it just requires your initial investment, essentially. Now you can always, and I would do this, take advantage of that deposit match. If you want to put $100 in your account, they will match it, give you another 100, so you got 200 total. And then I'm still going to give you 20. So it's only going to cost you $80 to get 200. Again, use the promo code SweetSpot. I see your guys' email addresses. I will reach out to you for any new signups. So those are the 2 giveaways. I also provide a cheat sheet that you guys can use. There's a link in the description. By the way, there's a link in the description for prize picks as well. I'll get you straight to that sign up page, and already we'll write in SweetSpot for the promo code. I do have a cheat sheet that you can follow along with when I go through this video. I am providing an optimizer. I am so sorry I did not even update it. It wasn't even on my brain. This whole week has just been me scrambling around trying to get everything together, but I am still providing an optimizer, which I will have done, I think probably before this video even comes out, because it takes YouTube a little bit of time to upload it. So if you want that optimizer, just let me know. Follow the subscriber giveaway details. Be subscribed, comment down below your 2 favorite golfers, and then email me at SweetSpotDFS@gmail.com. You can see it on the screen right there. Just let me know that you're interested in the optimizer and I will send it to you. So those are all of the giveaways and basically free things that you guys can access just by participating on the channel. Let's go ahead and recap the PGA Championship just to show you guys how well it worked out. Now, I usually like to start out with the GPP winning lineup versus the optimal lineup just to see how big of a gap there was, and also could we have built a lineup based off the SweetSpot rules to take down a GPP. So very first thing I want you guys to notice, all the golfers highlighted in blue are your GPP winning lineup, golfers in the GPP winning lineup. These little black tick marks in the top right hand corner are your optimal lineups, and then here in green, those are the realistic, like kind of the SweetSpot optimal rules. Essentially, we want our salary, our total salary of golfers over 49,000, but we want to try to get as close to 50,000 as possible. But the rule is just to get it over 49, because if you can see, the optimal lineup use up 48,400, so it left $1,600 on the table. We saw this with other past optimal lineups when we went over this in the preview video for the PGA Championship. I always, and will continue to try to, or suggest basically, never to leave more than $1,000 on the table. Because when you do that, you open yourself up to so many different combinations of lineups that you can build that it becomes more difficult to like pinpoint the right lineup. I will put a video about this sometime in the future, but just take my word for it. You're bringing in more golfers in your pool when you allow more salary on the table. And that just makes it more difficult to actually hone in and pick the right golfers to hit the optimal lineup. But you can see $1,600 were left on the table to get to the optimal lineup. And those golfers are all your guys in the top 5, except for Matt Fitzpatrick. So we have Justin Thomas, Will Zalatoris, Cameron Young, Mito Pereira, Tommy Fleetwood, and Chris Kirk. And again, that all equaled up to 48,400. It scored 519 points. Now the GPP winning lineup scored 502. So it was 17 points behind the optimal lineup, and he used up all $50,000 of the salary. That lineup consisted of Justin Thomas, Will Zalatoris, Cam Young, Mito Pereira, Tommy Fleetwood. So 5 of the 6 optimal lineup golfers. That's insane. Like, congratulations to that guy. That's awesome. And then scroll down to Joaquin Neiman, who scored 61 points in 23rd place. Meaning there was definitely room to beat that. Now, again, it was 17 points between them, but because this was such a low-scoring event, and I shouldn't even say it that way, the winning score was much closer to par than most tournaments. It was a difficult tournament. If we take a look at the results, -5 was your winning score. Justin Thomas beat Will Zalatoris in a playoff to win it. -5. That means scoring was difficult, especially with DraftKings points. Most of this right here are placement points. Your top 3, top 4, actually, yeah. top 3, because what? First place gets 30 points on DraftKings just for placement points. Second place gets 20. Third gets 18 points. And then it goes down every 2 points from there until it gets to 10th place. And then go check it out on DraftKings. You'll understand. But the reason that I bring all this up is if you just look between like 13th place to 20th place, 10 points separates the lowest score to the highest score, where we kind of see on average, that will probably be closer to 20 points on a normal event. But because it was so difficult at this golf course, the scoring is much more bunched. It's like closer to each other. So you could really take the 5 guys that were in the optimal lineup as well as the GPP winning lineup and mix and match as long as any of those salaries are under the remaining salary. So $41,500 for these 5 golfers. So you would need to find anyone $8,500 and less. So I mean, like you have Chris Kirk, Hoagie, Steele, Power, Answer, Hatton, Rose, Riley, Homa. The list goes on and on. Basically, all of these guys, you could just mix and match to produce a really good lineup. But to beat the GPP winning lineup, you have to score more than Joaquin Niemann, which was 61 points. So that just eliminates, a lot of these guys. I say that, and then when I look, can't really eliminate any of these guys. So there we go. Any of those guys could have got you there. Now the sweet spot process, we want to have all 6 of our golfers inside the top 10. So that's why I have these 6 golfers here highlighted in green. They're the highest scoring guys that we can put in a lineup that are inside the top 10 and above 49,000 but below 50,000. And that realistic lineup used up 49,400, so left $600 on the table, and it scored 515 points. So it's only 4 points behind the optimal lineup. And yeah, it would have been simple. And what you would have had to have built was a 10, 7, 7, 7, include an 8K, and then a 6K. Now, I saw some notable names on top of the Millie Maker while, the tournament was going on. I think Big T was up there. He had 3 6K golfers in his lineup. If he only watched SweetSpot DFS, he'd know that the likelihood of having 2 or more 6K golfers in a winning GPP lineup, pretty low. I was just actually looking at the GPP winning lineup just to make sure that they didn't have 2 6Ks. I mean, you certainly could have, right? You could have went with these 5 and then put Chris Kirk in your lineup. That was the optimal lineup. But it's much easier trying to get to closer to 50,000 as possible and going like a 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6 build and just, mix and match. Not so much mix and match, but substitute one of those. So we didn't have a 9K golfer in the optimal lineup or we didn't have one in the GPP winning lineup. So take a 9 out and replace it with another 8 or replace it with another 7. And that's what you got with the realistic lineup. You go 10, skip 9, go to 8. And with that 9K, include 2. Actually, basically all your 7Ks were higher 7K golfers. And then add your 6K in there. 6K range is very volatile, very difficult to determine which of those golfers are actually going to be in the optimal lineup or even in the GPP winning lineup. They're in the 6K range for a reason. It's volatility, complete volatility down there. They're priced that way because they've shown that they can spike at certain weeks, but more often than not, they're going to disappoint you. So you don't want to put all your eggs into the 6K basket whatsoever. And so some of those lineups that had 3 6Ks, I understand it differentiates yourself from other lineups out there, but it's really, really difficult, really, really difficult to, create a lineup that's going to take down a GPP that way. So that is your GPP winning lineup versus the optimal. The only other thing to talk about when it comes to the sweet spot process is how well the buckets did. I talk about the buckets, which I'm going to do with the preview and strategy video of the Charles Schwab. And I just want to show you guys how successful it was at the PGA Championship. So I'm going to hide the strength of field and percent that goes into that bucket so we can bring in, what else do I need to hide? How about we go average per year as well? What I'm trying to do is, so you can see this here, I always forget what I usually hide and don't hide. What about this? Keep all that. We can hide these three here. And then, sure, I'll hide the percentage. Okay. So when it comes to the buckets this last week at the PGA Championship, anything in this column, obviously Y means success, N means, or Y means yes for success, no means, or N means no, obviously. But what it's looking at is how many golfers from that bucket were inside the top 10. Also, how many were in the optimal lineup, as well as the sweet spot optimal, because remember, sweet spot optimal, we want all 6 guys inside the top 10 and above 49,000. The optimal lineup used up 48.4. So I want to, differentiate. So you can see using the sweet spot process, you could still take down a GPP or, just get close to, I suppose. No, it's mostly to take down a GPP. Anyways, when we look at this, we're looking at the projections here, the minimum and maximum. If that top 10 is within those two, then it's automatically a yes within the projections. If it's higher or lower, it will then look at the optimal lineup or the sweet spot optimal. And if those numbers are in the range, it will then spit out a yes. Because really we're really trying to hit the optimal lineup, which is the narrow focus part. But we're okay if we cast the net out a little bit larger and take in as many top 10s as we can. So it's one more likely if you get six of your golfers inside the top 10, you're going to take down a GPP. It may not be the optimal lineup, but you're going to take down the GPP. So that's why I have it looking at it this way. So when we look at all the buckets, you can see all of the Ys that are here, and you guys can, pause this video and just double check to see what it looks like. For this bucket, for instance, I'm sure there might be questions here. We always round down with our minimum projection. So this 2.81 goes down to a 2. The max goes up. We always round up. So 4.68 turns into 5. Well, you can see there were 6 top 10s. So you would probably automatically assume that didn't hit. But our optimal lineup and sweet spot optimal had 2 in there. That matches that minimum projection. Therefore, that bucket was successful. And then we scroll down, you can see only 2 buckets missed. And those all had to do with course history, which was really event history. So I had 1 to 3 under, actually, how about I just do this? We had 1 to 3 projected for course history 3s. We have 0 inside the top 10, the optimal lineup, and the sweet spot optimal. But let me show you something. Had Cameron Smith and Tyrrell Hatton finished inside the top 10, which is just 1 stroke difference than what they scored, that bucket would have been successful. So you see that their course history 3s right here, they finished 13th place. So just 1 shot outside of the top 10. Now, I've already looked. You could not put these guys in your lineup and take down a GPP. They didn't score enough points. Or did they? I might be wrong on that. I think you could actually roster Tyrrell Hatton. He scored 68. Remember, we need to score higher than 61 points with which Joaquin Niemann scored. Take Tyrrell Hatton, 68. So I think you could actually put Hatton with all of these guys right here. That equals 49,600. Yeah, so looking at that, that would have still won you a GPP. So that bucket in a way is successful, but according to the sweet spot process, it is not. So that bucket failed. And then course history 6s, I was projecting somewhere between 0 to 1. We had 2 in the optimal lineup. We had 3 inside the top 10. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that one. That one failed, but that's okay. Because if you only put 1 golfer in there, so be it. You probably still could have taken down a GPP. Especially if we went like with Tyrrell, so you needed him, and obviously the course history 6s, we just erase one of these guys. Mito Pereira, I think would be easy enough, right? Ooh, this is gonna be really close. So if we went Chris Kirk instead of Mito, then this would make our bucket work out. This salary equals 49,800, and if I go with the points, I'm just gonna keep that highlighted to make it easier. How many points? Remember, we need to score over. Well, this is 501.5. what was the GPP winning lineup? 502. So we would have lost by 0.5 if we would have followed the sweet spot process. So unfortunately, following the entire buckets, you know, very strict and disciplined, there was no avenue to actually take down a GPP, unfortunately. We would have finished second, which would have been soul crushing. And that's okay. That's fine. Second place was what? 200,000, something like that in the Millie Maker. So yeah, for the most part, when you look at it, if you follow the disciplines of the sweet spot process, you can get to a lineup that's going to make you lots of money. Unfortunately for the PGA Championship, it didn't work out. Buckets all together, remember there's 36 total, so 34 of them were correct. 36 out of 36, that equals 93%, I believe. That is the average hit percentage, if you want to call it that, week in and week out for the bucket system. So it's pretty successful. Now, one other thing to note, looking at the Marquee Tee Times, this is something that we'll talk about in the preview in this video with the Charles Schwab challenge. If we highlight these for every group there was, remember there was I think Bryson withdrew from this group. It was either Bryson or another kind of top name. Can't remember off the top of my head. But if I highlight these for each Marquee Tee Time, what we want to find is 2 golfers in the optimal lineup, usually. Now, I had told you there were 6 Marquee Tee Times, or were there 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7. So you divide that in half, that gets you 3.5. Now, I go on the under and the over of that, so I would say you want to find 3 to 4 golfers somewhere in these Marquee Tee Times. Now, the ones with the light green text for the number, that is an honorable mention group. That is not a Marquee Tee Time. So when we look at this, we only have Justin Thomas as well as Will Zalatoris in the optimal lineup. So we're 1 short, which makes me, from here going forward, I'm just going to say this. You want to find 2 to 4 golfers from the Marquee Tee Times to build into your lineups. Because 2 to 4, we see a large majority of. Didn't get to the 3, but if you include the honorable mention here with Tommy Fleetwood, you would have. So we do have 3 total golfers, which is fine. That's great. Now, personally, how I did this is I actually went with Patrick Cantlay because I did like Justin Thomas, but I really liked Rory McIlroy way more than Justin Thomas. So I went with Rory and I went with Cantlay, and a lot of those lineups also had Will Zalatoris in it. Now, Cantlay obviously broke many of our hearts, broke my heart. If he would have done well, like I made back half my investment. If he would have made the cut and maybe finished top 10, all depending on, I mean, he was pretty high owned in a lot of the contests, but I would have made back way more than just half my investment. So unfortunate, we were close. You know, I was on Will Zalatoris. Rory finished 8th. Obviously had a very disappointing Saturday round and kind of a disappointing Sunday round. But yeah, if I would have just switched, if you watched the strategy videos, like I was really torn between going Rory and Cantlay or Justin Thomas and Hideki Matsuyama. Now Matsuyama finished 60th. I would have had the winner, and the winner is way more important than getting 6 to 6 through the cut. So yeah, I think if I would have done it over, I would have went with Justin Thomas, obviously, because I would have had a lot of Will Zalatoris no matter what. Now, the other thing to talk about with this is I kind of went backwards. I usually like to talk about the rankings first and then go into the Marquee Tee Time pairings. But when it comes to my rankings, what I'd like to see inside, the top 20 of my rankings are at least 4 guys in the optimal lineup. And we only have 2. So unfortunately, that did not work out. I did change how my rankings worked this week. So I'm going to continue using that going forward. I know it didn't really, translate to success, but I don't think I'm going to have Tommy Fleetwood in my top 20. I don't think I'm going to have Mito Pereira in my top 20. And I'm certainly not going to have Chris Kirk in my top 20. Cameron Young is a different story. Super talented player. And if I would just put, if I would have had a ranking based off of potential, he'd have been high. in that remark, but obviously was not. Just don't have him like stat-wise, like good on Bermuda or good on. He's actually okay on Bermuda, but not good on bent grass. High percentage for bent. Okay. So anyways, I think maybe I can look into that going forward. But when it comes to the rankings, not terrible, but not really great. Like I see more top 20s than I see missed cuts. I think it's probably going to be very similar for most people. But yeah. Sweet spot process for the PGA Championship was pretty good. Jim Lemoyne out there followed the Marquee Tee Time pairings. I'd have to. I totally forgot to look at your lineup before coming on here. Shoot, I think you had Justin Thomas on there and Will Zalatoris, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly. But either way, he applauded the Marquee Tee Times because he followed it and made a bunch of money, over $700, I think. If I remember, it was like, maybe the memory isn't as great as it was. At least $400 he won. So congratulations, Jim. Let's go ahead and get into this preview. I'm going to bring down that and bring up the tournament information. So Charles Schwab Challenge, this has gone over so many different names. Like it was, I think if you go and Wikipedia, it's called the Colonial Invitational. I think that's what it's called. Either way, it's at the Colonial Country Club. This tournament was established in 1946, and it's gone through so many different names. That's not even worth mentioning all the different ones. It is the Charles Schwab Challenge this week, and Fort Worth, Texas is your place. Now, this is like the back door of Jordan Spieth and a lot of the other, Dallas native golfers in the field. Field size 120 players. So getting 6-6 through the cut is probably going to be pretty easy. No matter what, you're still going to need the winner to win anything significant in your contest. So I wouldn't, try to find cut makers this week. Just all around best potential players. Top 65 in ties. I was incorrect with this with the PGA Championship last week. That was top 70 in ties. That was my bad. I was just kind of lazy in researching. Average win score for this tournament is minus 13.77777 repeating. So we round up. It's minus 14. And your average cut score is actually +1. So this course plays a little difficult. And I'll talk more about that when we get to like the shot shape requirements, because there are a lot of different bends and twists to this golf course. It's pretty tree line, a little tight. I understand why the average cut score is over par. This week's strength of field, as I calculated out, is 472. It was 490 prior to Bryson DeChambeau and who's the other 8K golfer that just withdrew? Oh, Bubba Watson. Bubba Watson and Bryson withdrew from this. Obviously, Bryson's still battling. Not so much battling. He's still recovering from his surgery on his wrist. And Bubba somehow tore something in his knee that before I left the hospital, I had seen that had something to do with something happening at the US Open last year. I don't know. Maybe that's why Bubba's been playing kind of poorly this year. Couldn't tell you. I don't know more about that. I don't know more information about that. But those are your two guys that withdrew, and they brought the strength of field from 490 down to 472. So be prepared for other withdrawals. Like Justin Thomas obviously just won last week at the PGA Championship over Will Zalatoris. They were in a playoff. They're both in this field. A lot of talk thinking one of them is going to withdraw. So be on the lookout for that. That'll also drop the strength of field down considerably. I would imagine it still would be in the 400s, but it'd be in the lower 400s. You can take with that as whatever you want from that. It's still a pretty decent strength of field event. I think on average on tour, just normal events, your average is 300. So it's around 300. And that's just going off of my mind, just trying to remember all the different strength of fields. We see a lot of 240s, 280s, throughout the, in between major championships. Besides your marquee events like the Memorial, the Genesis Invitational, and any of your other higher events. I can't think of any of off the top of my head except for those two. But either way, 472 is pretty high. It's a pretty darn good field. The weather this week, 86 and 89 Thursday, Friday. Wind is a little bit higher on Thursday than it is Friday. Now, one thing I want to mention, I've been hearing that the stack that you did last week for the PGA Championship would have been highly beneficial to you. But I think no matter what you were going to do, the smart thing to do is always mix and match. You know, the PM, AM, AM, PM. And actually, I'm going to throw that on the just so you guys can see this, because I think it was Tyler Tambellini or Tamboline, whatever his last name is. He was talking about, like, if you stacked a wave over another, it was extremely beneficial for you. I only look at top 10s. Like, that is the only thing that I care about. So when we go and we look at the top 10, let's just count all the PMs. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is your PM AM stack. Yeah, 4 is pretty low. Now we have 8 AM groups. Your number 1 golfer. So if we just looked at optimal lineup golfers, you had Justin Thomas, Tommy Fleetwood, and I guess that was it. But your realistic optimal would also have had Matt Fitzpatrick. So when I put my optimizer together, I have 4 as my max number that I'll select from any wave. That still applies. So the sweet spot process would have got you on guys for the optimal lineup. Maybe not through the buckets, but when it comes to your waves, yeah, I'll concede that there are way more AM golfers in here than there are PM golfers. Like, as you can see just from this list here, 14 of your top 20 golfers, top 19 golfers, I should say. So there's 5 PM golfers. That's a significant difference, but your winner is in the PM wave, and you need your winner in order to win any money, like to win big, like good money. So it's really difficult just to be like, yep, And if we follow the sweet spot lineup, all these green right here, Fitzpatrick, Fleetwood, Thomas, there you go, 3 PMs, 3 PMs, 3 AMs. So I know that was a big source of contention. You just saw the proof. I get it. There were more numbers inside the top 20 that were in the AM PM wave. So be it. If you don't have Justin Thomas in your lineup, the best you're going to do is what? 20th place in a GPP, which is still going to get you good money, but it's not going to win it all for you. Put it this way. If you had Justin Thomas and Will Zalatoris in your lineup, and then you just mix and match your AM PMs, because you're going to need those two. They scored 90 points together. And you just include the rest, whatever wave you wanted, you were probably taking down a GPP. So it really didn't matter, honestly, when it comes down to it. Looking at the golf course information, Colonial Country Club, we've been here forever. John Brenemis and Perry Maxwell are your architects. Let's make a big deal about Perry Maxwell. This being the second event in a row that there was a Perry Maxwell design. And let's make a big deal about all the course architect freaks out there that enjoy this type of information. It's not going to matter. Don't get me wrong. Use them as your data points. Don't let it be an end-all be-all. It really doesn't matter. This golf course is so much more different than Southern Hills was. I shouldn't say so much different, but it is different. Sure, the architects like to use the topography of the course to the most natural state. So be it. Who cares? These golfers are good, but placing the ball exactly where they want it to go isn't always easy. Ask Mito Pereira on hole 18. It's just, I am a stickler when it comes to looking at the golf course and trying to figure out what best suits a golfer. But yeah, I'm not gonna go that deep and specific with certain, like Pete Dye, in my opinion. You want to have knowledge on Pete Dye golf courses because of how he sets them up. He sets them up to trick your mind. Perry Maxwell, from whatever I heard during the entire last week on like the Golf Channel and stuff like that, he is somebody who takes the entire golf course, or the land that the golf course is on, and uses every little bit of natural terrain as possible to build the golf course. That's awesome. That's great. That doesn't give you an advantage being a certain golfer at this golf course. It just doesn't. But using it as a piece of your research, go for it. I have no problem with that. If you want to put a weight on there, put like 2 points out of 100 or 1 point out of 100 on it, you know, and then go from there. So I'm not going to make a huge deal about it. I don't want you guys to like get sucked into that, because it's just more time wasted for you trying to figure out which golfer is going to be best to win a GPP. Par 70, 7,200 yards, bent grass greens, and Bermuda everything else. So very, very similar to Southern Hills last week, which, man, I'll tell you what, talking about Patrick Cantlay, I don't know what the hell that guy was doing throughout the entire tournament. Really, really bothered me, because all you got to do is when the camera's behind a golfer, watch where his feet, his shoulders, his hips, where they're all aligned to. Patrick Cantlay, for whatever reason, it seemed like he was working on his cut shot throughout that entire tournament. It's mind-boggling. That tournament didn't need a cut shot. You didn't need to hit a cut off the tee. You didn't need to hit a cut from the fairways. But yet, if you watched his feet throughout that tournament, they were straight left. And he followed through. I mean, kind of looked like me trying to hit a cut, where a lot of my cuts are push cuts, and a lot of his shots were push cuts. So I don't know if he was trying to hit a cut or what it was, but every time he tried to hit a draw, pretty much money. A lot of his shots that hit really close to the pin or just on the green in general were all draw shots. So when it comes to, man, that really, really bothers me. Anyways, I don't know if that had anything to do with the Bermuda turf or what it was, but he struggled, and he's not really terrible on Bermuda, and he's not terrible on bent. He has one of his best putting stats on bent grass. Long story short, I'm including those in my model this week. I would consider it to look at bent grass greens or bent grass putting, and then around the green and approach, use Bermuda. I think that's going to get you your best research points there. Now, when it comes to shot shapes, it's pretty even of how many draws versus fades you need at this golf course. So it is very much a shot shaper's paradise, essentially. That's what it looks like to me. And especially doing a flyover of Colonial. I heard Pat Mayo talk about this, about why would anyone want Bubba Watson at this golf course? It's because it basically accentuates his creativity. And that's when Bubba's at his best. When he can shape shots around corners, it just gives him an idea of how to play the golf course. That's why Bubba would be good there. I would say the same thing at this golf course. If you can find someone who likes shaping shots both directions, perfect. But there is clearly no advantage of one shot shape over the other. You have almost equal amount of fades versus equal amount of draws. If we take a look, let me bring you to the results page and just look at all your winners. Kokrak, Spieth, they all hit draws. But Berger, Morikawa in 2020 hit fades. Na hits a draw, Finau hits a fade. Rose can shape in both directions. Koepka hits a fade. Kisner's a draw. O'Hare's a draw. Spieth is a draw. I believe Harris English is a drawer as well. So is Chris Kirk. I don't know what Jason Bone is, but we do know Brandt Snedeker draws it. We do know Jordan Spieth draws it. Scott shapes it both directions. Duffner fades the golf ball. Kuchar fades the golf ball. And I don't remember what Boo Weekley does. I think he's a fader of the golf ball as well. But then you have Zach Johnson, who's a drawer of the golf ball right down here. So, just to prove my point, any shot shape is going to work here. So, go ahead with whatever you'd like. That's going to end the tournament course information piece of it. I think now, to kind of mix and match the preview and strategy video, I would just go right into the buckets, but I think we do buckets plus anchor buckets to try to figure out who the best golfers to choose from are, as well as kind of going with our anchor plays this week. So that being said, let's go ahead and go to our summary, which is our buckets. I'm going to go ahead and hide these buckets here. So we don't need that. And if you're wondering, I just have this ready to go. Once the tournament ends, all these fields will update for me. So don't mind the yeses and nos there. It doesn't mean anything right now. But let's go ahead and put a filter on this and talk about each bucket or each stat category one by one. If you're unfamiliar with the bucket system, I do have a video in the description below that will explain everything you need to know about the bucket system. And you can get a lot out of the first 5 minutes. You only have to watch the first 5 minutes and you'll understand what the bucket system is. But it is an 18-minute long video. Won't waste that much time of yours, and you'll get a very, very clear picture as to what this does. But it basically analyzes historical stats for all the stat categories I choose from. We have 6 of them: last year, last week, course history, recent form, salaries, and strokes gained. Those are all our 6 categories, and there are 6 buckets within each of those categories. That's all I'm going to explain. Go watch the bucket system to learn more about that. That video in the description below. When it comes down to it, I like to look to see which one has at least 1 in each of the minimums and which one has over 2. And those are what I kind of consider my anchor buckets. Now, I really like to look at how many golfers are in that bucket. And if it's less than 30, I really consider that my anchor bucket. So we already have 2 within the last year buckets. We don't have 2. We just have 1, which is your last year ones. You do want to find golfers who top 20 at this event last year. So we want somewhere between 1 to 3. And unlike preview videos in the past, I'm actually going to look at each of these buckets so you can see the golfers that are in each one. So when we look at last year ones, these are golfers who top 20, you can see here, in this event last year. And we had how many? Seems like way too many. 26? Is that correct? Oh, we have a ton of top 20 ties. Okay. Hey, they all count the same. It all counts the same. So that's probably why we have so many. Yeah, we do have 26. So we want to select 1 to 3 golfers from this bucket to put in our lineup. Collin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, this is all sorted by salaries. So if we're really looking at this, I think the 8K and above range, you definitely want to have 1 golfer in there for sure. Or like down below here, like in Eric Compton, that's 6K, probably cross him out. Kramer Hickok, who is a University of Texas graduate, maybe might be a good play here. He's burned me so much over this last couple of weeks. I can't get myself around to him. If I'm going to go in the 6K range, I don't mind Adam Long. I don't mind Pat Kazire or Kevin Streelman. Probably going to pass on Lucas Glover. I do like Doug Gim at this event, although I probably much prefer him on Poa annua than any other surface. Charlie Hoffman's really difficult to get around to because he's been battling a back injury, and this whole year has been kind of a failure for him. So I don't know if I could get to Charlie Hoffman. I do like Vincent Whaley and Wyndham Clark, but my rule here in the 6K range, I'll say this is a new rule. Never anchor your lineups around 6K range golfer. Instead, the other rule too is never play more than 4% of a 6K golfer either. So these guys will be mix and matched in my lineups. And if I'm being really truthful, I won't own any more of these guys more than 2%. So they're going to be at a strict 2% exposure maximum. And then these guys here will be at a 4%. So take that with what you will. But the rest of them here, I don't mind anchoring around Jordan Spieth this week. Really like him. I also really like Abraham Answer. Morikawa is really interesting. He's done well here the last 2 years. If you remember, he lost to Daniel Berger in 2020 because of a shaky 6-foot putt? And maybe it was less. I think it might have been a 3-foot putt that he missed. That would have extended the playoff between him and Daniel Berger. But he finished second 2 years ago and finished 14th last year. Now, his last week performance isn't something to give you a lot of confidence on. He placed 55th, which isn't a really good bucket to go with, but it's Collin Morikawa. So do with that as you will. Berger, I should say these 3 guys in the 9K range are very, very interesting to play. Usually my rule here too is don't play more than 1 9K golfer. And really only one of them is in the Marquee Tee Times, and that's Daniel Berger. The other 2 are in the honorable mention groups. So, I don't mind playing them. By the way, this isn't me like not endorsing these 2 golfers. I actually like them both at this golf course. Gooch, super interesting. Same with Kokrak, both in the 8K range. Do like them. And then you got a good mix of 7K golfers here that I really don't have an issue playing any of them. I will probably play every single one of them at least 1%, if not more. I am not anchoring my lineups around any of these guys down here. So really my anchors are probably going to be somewhere in here. I'm leaning towards like a Jordan Spieth, Abe Answer, and probably a Taylor Gooch. The other guys, they're iffy. I'm not sure. I do like them, but not sold. Like my confidence isn't super high with them. So that last year 1 bucket, 1 to 3 guys. Obviously I gave you enough to go with from there. Last year 2 is pretty close. We're projecting 0 to 2 of those golfers. Not an anchor bucket, so I'm not going to talk about them. Missed cuts. So a missed cut from last year isn't a detriment. We do have 20 golfers in that in that bucket this week, and some of them are actually pretty good. We do have 1 to 2 as a projection. Remember, if this doesn't get over 2, we automatically drop this to 0. So we're really projecting 0 to 2 out of this bucket, which then leads us to the next one, which are the did not plays. Basically, we have just as many golfers in this bucket as we do on average per year. So I think this projection is pretty safe. So since this would be, it's not an anchor bucket, but you're going to want to probably select at least 1 golfer from this bucket. We're going to talk about it. And you have Victor Hovland in it, which is a great play, in my opinion. I think perhaps his bad finish last week, or just okay finish, might steer people off of him. I know like Sam Burns is going to be super popular this week. So you could go with a Sam Burns or even a Max Homa. I think those are great plays. But since this is a 1 to 3, yeah, it's pretty much the same as our bucket 1. So I guess this bucket becomes a little bit more attractive because there are a lot, like, there's some good names here, 8K and above. I wouldn't mind going to Simpson. I think a lot of people are going to be on Tommy Fleetwood, but I think rightfully so. I do like Fleetwood this week. But I guess if you were to kind of do a contrarian lineup, maybe you stay away from Burns and maybe you stay away from Fleetwood and instead go to golfers like Homa, Hovland, and Simpson if you were to play that game theory angle, which I don't really care for. But since they're here in the buckets, I have no issue with that. So, like I said, very compelling plays. Davis Riley's here. Mito, who kind of choked it away last week. Who knows what that's going to do to him. You also have people like Bezadenhout, as well as Ricky Fowler. Van Rooyen, do not sleep on him. This guy is extremely talented. We also have KH Lee, who just won the Byron Nelson a couple weeks ago. Aaron Rye, who's a really good player. Lots of great names here. And then the 6K range, I'm probably just staying away. But with as many 6K golfers as we see here, what do we have? 31 total 6K golfers. More likely, one of your top 10 golfers from this bucket will come from the 6K range, and I couldn't tell you who that would be. And I'm not gonna waste any time talking about any of those 6K golfers. I think if you can make a case for any of the golfers I highlighted, by all means, pick them. Don't choose more than 3 of these guys, though. Remember, that is the rule. Our minimum is 1, our maximum is 3. Don't play more than 3 of these guys. That also applies to the 6K range golfers as well. So there are several golfers in this bucket. What do we have on for total? 49 golfers in that bucket. You only want to pick 3. So just be aware of that. Now, going to our next bucket, I always like to go to last week. It's just it's very similar to our last year bucket. And when we look at this, it's pretty even, but our main buckets here also are top 20s from last week's tournament or golfers who just did not play in those buckets. The rest of them are pretty close though. Like we're projecting 0 to 2 last year 2s, 0 to 2 last year 3s, and 0 to 2 last year 5s, or last week 5s. If I said last year throughout that whole thing, I meant last week. So really just playing the PGA Championship is not a terrible thing for any of the golfers in this field, but the only true anchor bucket would be your last week 1s. So when we go and look at that, select everything. And by the way, I forgot to mention this. You can always follow me along with the cheat sheet on this. got to make a copy of it and then also filter out using the DraftKings filter that I have. It is, hopefully you guys understand where the filter button is. I think somebody reached out to me last week saying that they couldn't figure this out. It is on the spreadsheet, and it should have it in there. I tested it out with a Phantom account, downloaded it. I could see the filter, so I'm assuming you guys can see the filters as well. And if you don't, reach out to me. I work in IT, so I'm very, very familiar with supporting people trying to figure things out on the computer. So do not feel ashamed or anything like that to reach out. I will help you out. When it comes to this last year one bucket, JT's up there. Will Zalatoris obviously finished first, second. But then we have a lot of good names here, 8K and above. Now, we want to select 1 to 3 of these guys. Pretty easy to do that. We've already talked about Sam Burns once. We already talked about Homa. We've already talked about Answer, as well as Gooch, as well as Fleetwood, as well as Simpson, as well as Pereira. The more and more you see these guys in the buckets, just the better chance they have finishing inside the top 10. Does not guarantee they will finish inside the top 10. We also see Davis Riley again. I think, yeah, there's a lot of good golfers here, and you want to select 1 to 3 of these. I don't mind starting here and picking 2. Like, to me, if we're following the last year anchor buckets as well, remember it was a 1 and a 6 that we wanted to select. Starting here wouldn't be terrible. Like, if you wanted to go Sam Burns, Tommy Fleetwood, and be super chalky, by all means, go for it. Or like a Taylor Gooch and a Max Homa. I don't know how chalky that will be, but I think that's pretty solid. And I wouldn't go Taylor Gooch, Abram Answer, because they both do share the last week buckets together. I would select one of them. So maybe I go Answer and JT, or Answer Zalatoris, Answer Gooch. No. I just said don't do that. Or Homa. Go Max Homa, Abram Answer. Maybe this is a week you go 2 9Ks. I don't know. Up to you guys. So interesting group here. Probably not going to have a lot of shares with Lucas Herbert. Not a lot of shares with Tom Hoagie. But that's just me. I will play some of them, and I also won't have a lot of shares with Justin Rose despite his good ranking. Like, just not going to happen. So do with that as you will. The other one was the last week 6 bucket. So this one's way larger. These are golfers who didn't play. Again, we are projecting somewhere between 1 to 3, finishing inside the top 10 in this bucket, and it's just filled with a ton of 6K golfers. So we have 49 golfers in the 6K range. The remaining 10 golfers are not. So we're probably going to find a 6K golfer here, maybe 2. And remember, we just need 1 to satisfy the bucket or the projections, because it's 1 to 3. But I do like Aaron Rai quite a bit. I like him in most events. I think he's going to grind it out for you and try to, produce the best finish possible. I think it's worth playing him. Sung Jae is a really interesting candidate this week because he couldn't play in the PGA Championship last week due to basically the whole country being on lockdown, South Korea that is, as well as apparently he had COVID over there. That's just what I have heard. I didn't see that on the news or anything like that. So I don't know. That is probably the ultimate risk play, going with someone like Sung Jae. So do with that as you will, but it just makes me like Aaron Rai even more. CT Pan probably a better fit for this golf course. He definitely ranks better, especially better than like Aaron Rai. But I just like Rai more. I don't mind Matthew Neesmith or Dylan Fratelli. Really, it's just up to you guys. Like David Lipsky also has my attention as well. But I do like some of these 6K golfers. Like I do like Adam Long. We already talked about him. I don't mind Alex Smalley. He's extremely talented. Rory Sabatini is another name. Again, I don't want to play any of these 6K guys more than 4%. So if you're a single lineup builder, you definitely have to choose which 6K golfer you like the best. There are a lot of good names in the 6K range. Like I like Schwab. I don't mind Doug Gim. I know a lot of people are on JT Poston. That's a good play. Sahith Theegala. That's a good play. I don't know. I don't really have like a really strong lean. I'm not going to in the 6K range. Remember, they're there for a reason. So that would be your last week buckets, all the anchor buckets we talked about. Remember, you can have 0 to 2 any of these buckets down here, except for those that finish 60th to 80th place. Usually you don't want to select those golfers, even if it's a high profile name. Just doesn't show up that well. Next one to go to is your course history buckets. So when it comes to the anchor buckets here, looks like we've got 2 of them. And it's pretty spread out though for the rest of them. Looks like 0 to 2 with the rest of the buckets. Remember, this one will be 0 to 2. That one's 0 to 2. And then course history 5 is not very good. But course history 2, course history 3, the only anchor bucket out of this one would be your course history 2 golfers, because there are only 20 there. Remember, I always look 30 and below. And then the projections have to be at least 1 to 3. So that's what we have with course history 2, but the other buckets are pretty good to go with too. So you don't really have to, you know, we will take a look at course history 2 and 3. So your course history 2 golfers, these are all the golfers that have that 20 to 40 average finishing position at this event. Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland, Abram Ancer, Tony Finau, Daniel Berger, lots of good guys, 8K and above, pretty decent 7K range as well. Like, I really like McNeely this week. Chris Kirk will also be up there for a lot of us. Kevin Kisner's not a bad play. Patrick Reed's down here. I don't know how I feel about playing him this week, but high upside nonetheless. And then the 6K range, I just don't care for, really. I'll play some of them, but I really don't care for many of them. So you want to pick somewhere between 1 to 3 of these guys. And I think you got a really good list. A lot of things are either pointing JT or Hovland. I think that might be where I start my lineups. I might go with JT. I might go with Victor Hovland. And I really don't mind dropping down Abram Ancer, or that's probably it. I really can't see myself going to Finau or Berger. But if I'm picking golfers in the, and we didn't even talk about this, Marquee Tee Times, you know that it's all highlighted in green here because of that. We'll talk about that here later in the video, but Ancer and Finau are in honorable mention groups, which if I was to anchor around lineups, I definitely want to find 2 Marquee Tee Time guys to anchor my lineups around. So we'll get there when, well, I'll give you my anchors once we get to the Marquee Tee Times. But needless to say, options are pretty good. Now, there aren't any other anchor buckets to look at for course history, but we were going to talk about course history 3s because you also want 1 to 3 here. It's just there's more golfers in this bucket than what I would consider an anchor bucket. Will Zalatoris, Sam Burns, Sungjae Im, Taylor Gooch, Webb Simpson. These are all golfers I do like, and I don't mind anchoring my lineups around. So like Zalatoris and JT, although they finished first, second, and there's a possibility they could withdraw, they're pretty decent plays to anchor your lineups around. So don't be afraid to play them. But a lot of me is just, I think this is a Taylor Gooch. It just feels like a Taylor Gooch track. Like, I want to play Taylor Gooch here. He might be an anchor play at 8,900. We'll see. I'm not completely sold on it. I'll see who he's paired up with. He could easily be paired up with like Justin Thomas, and I wouldn't do that. But I'm really liking JT or Will Zalatoris, and I know we already talked about Jordan Spieth before. I wouldn't mind going to Jordan Spieth either. So those are 3 of my 10Ks that I probably going to anchor. One of those guys will be my anchor, and then I'll drop to another guy. Yeah, we got a bunch of 7K golfers that I don't really care for. Like, Davis seems interesting. I don't mind playing Stuart Sink, but not crazy about it. Cameron Tringale's 19th in my model, which is cool, but I don't really care. Sebastian Munoz really intrigues me because I think he can play really well here. Obviously, he finished 3rd last year at this event, so he's definitely a golfer that I wouldn't mind. And he just finished 3rd at the Byron Nelson. It's kind of trending to, Sebastian Munoz being a good play, but I wouldn't anchor any of my lineups around Sebastian Munoz. So I don't know. Up to you guys. A lot of 6K golfers here as well. So that could, one of those guys could be the one in the projections here to finish inside the top 10. Who knows? Up to you guys. Now going to the next bucket, recent form. 2 really heavy buckets. Just one of them is an anchor bucket, but it's your recent form 2s and recent form 3s. A lot of that I think has to do with the fact that recent form 1 doesn't have more than 3 golfers in it. So that would be your really, really good recent form golfers. But anyways, your high projections here are recent form 2 and recent form 3. The rest of them, not that great whatsoever. So recent form 2, you want somewhere between 2 to 5 golfers in your lineup. And then recent form 3, you want somewhere between 1 to 4. So very, very interesting when it comes to recent form. And there aren't like a ton of golfers in either of those buckets. One of them, this one has 29, recent form 2. Remember, you want somewhere between 2 to 5. 2 to 5. Now, we could have 2 or 3 of these 10K golfers finish inside the top 10, and it would satisfy that bucket. But you can't build your lineups around 2 to 3 of these guys. So keep that in mind. So I think you select right here. You start here, you pick one of these golfers to anchor your lineups around. We've already talked about Zalatoris. We've already talked about Hovland. But the other 3, Spieth, Morikawa, Scheffler, I wouldn't mind one of those guys to anchor my lineups around. I think Jordan Spieth, especially with his price tag at 10.4, a really good choice. I think a clear pivot would be to a Morikawa, because I don't think he's going to be as owned as Scottie Scheffler or Jordan Spieth. But Scottie Scheffler at his price tag might make building lineups difficult, and that's where most people might just stay away from him. I don't mind playing him. I think it's a decent choice. So you got some choices here. Remember, we want 2 to 5 golfers from this bucket. Then we drop down. There's Max Homa, Taylor Gooch, Tommy Fleetwood. We've already talked about those guys. But you also have Tony Finau in there. Mito shows up a ton, so maybe it's still good to go back to Mito. Munoz, we've already talked about a bunch, or we just talked about, I should say. Yeah, a lot of good guys. Aaron Rise down here. So as I keep talking about some of these players, Aaron Rise just keeps being brought up by me. I think I'm going to play him at a high clip, but he's still not going to be an anchor play. Same with Sebastian Munoz. He won't be an anchor play, but I'll be playing him quite a bit. Some sneaky names here, Lipsky and Neesmith. They're showing up a bunch on these buckets that I go over. Same goes kind of with Justin Rose, but I don't care to play Justin Rose that much. I'm gravitating towards Gooch or Fleetwood. I actually don't mind Homa. This could be a Finau week. I'm never one to really accurately predict Finau. But so if we were to think about this, you could go 8K with Fleetwood or Gooch. You go 9K with Homa or Finau. And then you got 10K golfers here to choose from as well. So I think you could find your anchor plays somewhere in here. And I also wouldn't mind going Spieth, Gooch. Really, I wouldn't. Or even like a Scottie Scheffler, Gooch. Depending on what their tee times are, of course. So remember, you want 2 to 5 of those guys. And then when we talk about the next one, you want 1 to 3. Or was it 1 to 4? I think it was 1 to 4. Yeah, 1 to 4 of the golfers in this bucket. And it's the most expensive golfer is Sam Burns. So Sam Burns, Abram Ancer, Berger, lots of guys we've talked about quite a bit. You know, I don't mind a lot of these golfers. Maverick McNeely shows up once again. Chris Kirk, we've already talked about them. Tom Hoagie is in an anchor bucket, so that's really interesting. The rest of them are just risky plays. And don't get me wrong, one of these guys could win you a GPP. Anyone in the 6K range or even in that 7K range right here. Very, very good options. So those are really the only 2 buckets to look at when it comes to recent form. Again, you can follow along using the cheat sheet in the description below. The next buckets revolve around salary and strokes gain. So when we look at salary buckets, we're projecting somewhere between 1 to 3 10K golfers being inside the top 10. Now, I don't think this is a week where you put 2 10K golfers together. I think you definitely want to anchor around one of them, though. So keep that in mind. None of the 8K or 9K buckets are anchor buckets. and they both would have a minimum projection of 0. Remember, if these aren't over 2, our minimums go straight to 0. So when it comes to salaries, hard for me to say you want a 10 as well as a 9 and an 8. A lot of this is just like, you probably want a 10, and then you need to make a decision whether or not you want a 9K or an 8K golfer in your lineup. And then from there, if you were to skip the 9K, do you want 2 8K golfers in your lineup? It's a possibility. I mean, it's looking that way this week because there are some good options in the 8K range. There's still good options in the 9K range. So totally up to you guys. 7K range usually runs supreme. There are more golfers in that bucket, and really the strength of field that represents that bucket's pretty good. 6K range, it's a crapshoot. 0 to 1, we're projecting for the high 6K, which is 6.5 and above, and really bad projections for the lower 6K, which is 6.4 and below. So we'll go ahead and we'll look at Marquee Tee Times coming up and determine what our anchor plays are based off of salaries. But let's just keep that in mind that definitely starting with a 10K is probably the way to go. Now, let's say Zalatoris as well as Scheffler withdraw. Let's do this. I can do that easily by just removing JT and Zalatoris from here, and it will be accurately reflected here. So now it'll show, it still shows 6. How and why? Oh, because it is looking at this actually. So JT and Zalatoris. So we'll take them out. And now the projection goes 1 to 3. So it's still showing that you want a 10K golfer, even if both Zalatoris and Justin Thomas were to withdraw. So that is incorporating the strength of field that applies to that bucket, as well as obviously the amount of golfers that are in that bucket. So still 1 to 3, no matter what. But it's just a higher success that I think that's a no-brainer, right? Your top 6 golfers are in the 10K range. It's going to happen. But that's me telling you guys you should also just anchor your lineups around a 10K golfer. So we'll keep that in mind. Now, the other bucket that I like to talk about are strokes gained. So when it comes to strokes gained buckets, looking at all of this, like strokes gained 2 to strokes gained 4, you want 1 to 3 of these guys. Only one of them is really an anchor bucket. That's your strokes gained 2 golfers. And if you're unfamiliar with what the strokes gained buckets are, again, watch the bucket system video in the description below. It'll explain all about it. I put them in ranges based off of their strokes gained stats. One would be all things positive, and then the rest of them are a combination of positive off the tee, or it's just off the tee and putting. So again, watch that video if you want to understand that. But it looks like we want to kind of mix and match equally, you know, almost basically looking at least one golfer from the strokes gained 2, 3, and 4 buckets, and then maybe one from the strokes gained 1, because it's a good bucket. It's a high quality bucket, pretty good success rate. Not quite the 100% frequency that we see strokes gained 2, 3, and 4. So when we look at these guys, I have this all color coded based off the buckets. So your dark green are your strokes gained 1, your light green are strokes gained 2. And this is also sorted by salary. So you got 2 10K golfers in the strokes gained 1. It's not an anchor bucket. The projection's 0 to 2. So maybe we stay away from this bucket. Maybe you don't select any of those guys. I don't think it's very smart, because I think JT or Scotty Scheffler are going to finish inside the top 10. But if you're one of those that are like, yeah, I will avoid that one, then you can come down here. You want somewhere between 1 to 3 from each of these buckets, right? 1 to 3 from the strokes gained 2 bucket, which is headed by Hovland, and then you got Homa Answer in there as well. Maverick McNeely I like quite a bit, and then you can determine if you like the other ones. Strokes gained 3 has a lot of good golfers in it, and this is also 1 to 3 that you want to pick here. To double check, yep, 1 to 3. So like, I don't mind going with a Spieth and say we don't do Will Zalatoris, but if you went with a Spieth and then put in Aaron Rai, which obviously I told you I liked, maybe starting there is pretty good. And then mix in like a 9K guy with Homa, perhaps. and a McNeely, because this would fit that 1 to 3. Pretty decent. Totally up to you guys, obviously. But yeah, a lot of other 6K golfers down here. Pretty decent. And also your strokes gained 4, which is negative off the tee, which Taylor Gooch usually isn't negative off the tee. If we look at his driving distance, 303 is his average. That's usually just average, or like distance alone. That puts you in a good strokes gain off the tee bucket. But he obviously is not. So I think he's a good choice. I'm not even going to say anyone that's over that 300 yard distance, average is going to be just good altogether. But I'm highlighting all the guys that are 300 yards and above. I don't think these are bad choices whatsoever. I do like Gooch. I don't mind Webb. He was showing good signs at the PGA Championship, a hard golf course. And the rest of these guys, yeah, pretty decent. I don't mind them at all. So, yeah, that would be kind of my stroke chain 4s. Now, to end this video, I'm going to talk about the rankings. Remember, we want to find somewhere between 1 to 4 golfers inside my top 20 SweetSpot ranks. So, answer's number 20 on the list, but you're not going to see his name. You're just going to see the top 19. So, what I usually like to do, remind you guys, if we're ranking these by salaries, 8,200 is the last salary you see on the list. Anything that's below that shows up inside my top 20 ranks is just a value play. So like Cameron Tringali, Sebastian Munoz, Justin Rose, Kevin Na, these are all value plays. Not saying you should play these guys no matter what, just letting you guys know they're considered values. The other thing I like to see are 9K golfers that jump 10K golfers. Or vice versa, or not so much vice versa, but like 8K golfers that jump 9K golfers. So we have right here, over Berger, over Finau. So like Finau and Berger, as they currently play, they are a little overvalued. At least that's kind of how I interpret this, and I would actually agree. Now, Sung J M, we haven't seen him in a while, but if you go and look at his past, 7 weeks, he's got 2 top 20s there, and I think his other finish is like 23rd place. I think if I go here and we go look at Sung J, yeah, so he has an 8th place at the Masters, 14th place at Zurich, and then a 21st place at the Heritage. Now, the Zurich you can just ignore. That was a team event, but a 21st and an 8th, that's not terrible. I don't know what COVID's going to do to him. I don't know what that whole break was, or the reason he missed the PGA Championship. I don't know what that's going to do to him. But 7th in my model, based off of just all the stats I like to look over, I think that's pretty solid. I do want to select 2 golfers from here, but I'm going to use the Marquee Tee Times, which takes into account the score, the ranks for each golfer in the tee time, and determines, that my top 10 groups are going to be quote unquote in the Marquee Tee Times. So what I did different this week is I actually added this group rank. I guess maybe GR rank isn't going to be easy enough to understand, but group rank. So if I went like this and I filter by condition and go less than or equal to 10, you're going to see all of these guys are actually highlighted in green. And if you did the opposite, you would see that they aren't. Now, to make it a Marquee Tee Time, remember I have these thresholds that I have in place. Basically, I take the amount of golfers in the field, which is 120 this week. I multiply it by 0.59. That gets me my low end, which I think was 70. And then I also multiply it by 0.66, which is like 2/3. I'm looking at 2/3 of that number. That equals 79. So if their collective number for a group, so let's say this Burns, Horschel, Gooch group, when I add all their ranks together, it equals 26. So they would be in the Marquee Tee Times. Now, group number 7 is very close. This is actually 83. When you add all of these up, it's 83. So it's just outside that range, and it's not a quote-unquote Marquee, or it's not a Marquee Tee Time. It's just an honorable mention. I think this is super close to include as a Marquee Tee Time. So we'll see how it goes going forward, because I'm just going to give you my top 10 groups every single week. I think that just makes this really easy, kind of use the group rank so you guys can see. But if I highlight these, remember, we want to select at least 2 golfers from what's on the list. And really focus on the guys that have the black fonts. So in my opinion, we want to go like here. Actually, let me back up. Now, we want to pick somewhere between 2 to 4 golfers from the Marquee Tee Times. And we also don't want to go pick golfers in the same group. So if, say, you liked Sam Burns and Taylor Gooch, I would highly recommend don't play them together. Just choose one of them. So the fact that Sam Burns and Gooch are together, I think no matter what, I've talked about Gooch enough. Gooch is going to be one of my guys that I'm going to put in an anchor. I really like Gooch this week. As we scroll through the rest of this, I don't think I can include Morikawa, Simpson, or Patrick Reed as an anchor, so I'll skip that group. JT Scheffler and Kokrak. Now, JT and Scheffler, I don't mind as an anchor, and I might start there. We'll see. We'll double check on that. It's definitely it's a very, very high consideration. Going to the next Marquee Tee Time would be Will Zalatoris, Justin Rose, Kevin Kisner. I don't like Rose or Kisner that much. If there was a marquee, like a golfer that I wanted to anchor around, it's going to be Zalatoris, but I don't. Like I just seeing that group together and everything we've already talked about in this video, I don't think I can really anchor around him. The next one is Hovland, Mito Pereira, Tom Hoagie. I also don't think I can anchor around any of these guys. Hovland is definitely a consideration, but I'm not going to with Mito or Hoagie. I don't mind playing them, but I'm not going to anchor my lineups around them. So I do have my 8K golfer. So this next one is probably where I'm going to select another anchor, which is Jordan Spieth, Daniel Berger, Max Homa. I think I just go with Jordan Spieth, just make it really easy on myself with building lineups. But including Daniel Berger or Max Homa also opens up things too. So I think these are your 2 groups you want to select golfers from. I can somehow, there we go. Burns, Horschel, or Gooch, and then match that up with Spieth, Berger, or Homa. I think that's probably where you find your best anchor plays from. At least that's where I'm kind of looking. I usually really like to start with a 10K golfer no matter what. So if it's not going to be Jordan Spieth, it's then going to be either Justin Thomas or Scottie Scheffler. So basically my 10Ks that I'm anchoring around are going to be Spieth, JT, or Scheffler. And then from there, I don't mind going Max Homa, Tony Finau, Taylor Gooch, or Sam Burns. So it's a small selection of golfers that I'm planning to anchor my lineups around. I will determine everything. Did I say Finau? I didn't mean Finau. I meant Daniel Berger. Berger, Spieth, they're all in the same group together. Finau and Answer, by the way, here. Like John Huh, I think replaced Bryson DeChambeau or Bubba Watson, one of the two. This group would have definitely been in Marquee Tee Time if it would have included Bryson or even Bubba, but it's not. It is definitely in play. I don't mind going with a Finau or an Answer, but I'm not anchoring my lineups around them. Either way, yeah, it's a small selection of golfers that I selected. You know, we're choosing between what? See, it's these 3, Thomas, Scheffler, and then Gooch or Burns. So we got 7 golfers we've highlighted. And really we can only play 1, 2, 3 golfers max, you know, in a lineup from those groups. So out of 7, we're trying to select 3. And in all reality, maybe it's not even 3. We're trying to select 2. Somewhere between 2 to 3. Because if it's Spieth, then we skip Thomas and Scheffler, and then we'd pick Burns or Gooch. That's just my opinion. You might like better golfers, or you might like other golfers on here that might be better selections, but that's kind of where I'm leaning, and that's kind of what I like this week. So those are my anchor plays. An hour and 20 minutes. Wow. Well, it was like a 30-minute recap, right? Which is fine. No problem there. And then getting into this preview. don't think there's anything else to talk about. I would, you know, build lineups, but I don't have the optimizer ready, so I really can't, unfortunately. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all that we have. Hopefully going over all of that give you some answers as to who you should anchor your lineups around. Let me know in the comments below. Remember, that's how we do the subscriber giveaway anyways. Comment down below if you need a topic. Give me your 2 favorite golfers, and then you're going to get a free entry into this giveaway as long as you're subscribed. And again, we're running it for $30 if we can get to 400 subscribers. So we need 34 new subscribers to do that. And I'm giving $30 away. Or the next time I come on, which won't be next week. Remember, I'm off next week because I'm moving. The week after that, I'll give away $10 if we don't hit this goal of 400 subscribers. So it's either $30 or it's $10. And all the people that have participated over the last few weeks, including this week, they all have entries into this giveaway for each time that they've commented on a video. Well, it's max 1 per video, but if you've commented, you get a free entry. And again, I'm giving away 30 or I'm giving away 10. It's up to you guys. Those that are not yet subscribed, please do so. And then that way you can get an entry into this giveaway. And then obviously Prize Picks, if you're not yet I always want to say subscribed. If you're not yet signed up with Prize Picks, please do so using the promo code SweetSpot. And if you put 20 bucks in your account, I'm going to give you that $20 back. So super easy with that as well. Cheat sheet in the description below. I tried mentioning it as much as I could throughout the video. So hopefully you did go to that site, download the spreadsheet so you could follow along with this video. Makes things easier. And then of course I will also have an optimizer that goes over all the bucket system conditionals to help you build the lineup that best fits what is most likely going to be the optimal lineup. Again, email me at SweetSpotDFS@gmail.com in order to get the optimizer. And then I think that's it, right? Don't have anything else. I'm trying to remember. Was there one more thing I wanted to add to this video? I will put out a Prize Picks video tomorrow. Going over my favorite picks for round 1 and my strategies for rounds 2, 3, and 4. That doesn't really change. So if you've seen that before, then you've seen it. But if you're interested in my picks, I'll give those away too for round 1. Yeah, I think that's it. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.